All right, so we are really excited to be joined by a longtime sports executive, president of the Los Angeles Dodgers, a leader or a member of the leadership group of a new women's hockey league to come in January of 2024. Stan Kasten, welcome to the Athletic Hockey Show.
Hi, Hailey. Hi, Sean. Good to be here with both of you.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. As I said, we're really excited to get into this conversation. It's been a really busy week. It's actually kind of crazy that it's been a week now. Somebody told me that it's been a week since the town hall meetings where all of this happened. There's been a lot going on, so we're excited to dive into this. I guess just to start, can you take us through, Stan, how some of this kind of news over the last week kind of came together? You said this, we chatted already. It's important to understand that this was like two different transactions that ultimately came together to fundamentally change the landscape of women's hockey. Can you just give our listeners that kind of understanding of what happened here?
Yeah, the whole story begins more than a year ago when Mark Walter and Billie Jean agreed to start having discussions with the PWHPA. We knew that there was a void in women's hockey because these top players didn't have any organized league to play in. And so that went on for a while. And then in November, I can't tell you exactly why Mark asked me to do this, but that was when he came to me and said, "Hey, Stan, please, can you please get this done for me?" So, of course, I was happy to do that. And so we began with, it was really Mark's idea that, let's do this right. Let's have them organized. Let's have a collective bargaining agreement so that the problems we're trying to fix are memorialized, that, the salaries and the housing and the benefits and all of the other stuff is incorporated formally into an agreement that protects them, that will give them, I think, confidence in us. And so we began that process. It took a long time because collective bargaining, if you're just renegotiating or renovating, let's call it, an existing collective bargaining, that's hard enough. We've seen leagues strike over that. But when you're starting from a blank piece of paper, it's really hard. It's really hard. And so we set about doing it. It took about 6 months, but that's because it's hard. We had some contentious moments, but not that many. And generally speaking, the relationship between this ownership group and the players is as good as I've ever seen. We set out to start a league. We were going to have X number of teams in our first year next year. And then like midway through, there was some traction, I think, in our more casual conversations with the PHF. And they were happening simultaneously. Because of legal requirements and NDAs and all that, we couldn't talk about it to anyone. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't talk to anyone on the PH side. Obviously, we weren't disclosing to the we couldn't talk to anyone on the PW side. We couldn't tell anyone on the PH side what the status of our collective bargaining agreement was. So that was yet another complication. It took about 6 months for each. Those 6 months coincided. We managed to land both of these planes at the same time, and voila, we now have one league, which is the league for which all of the best women's hockey players in the world can play, and it's a very exciting prospect. I didn't know where it would end when we began, but it seems we've ended in a very good place, although an intimidatingly long to-do list is still in front of me, but we're pretty excited about this.
Well, what's that to-do list look like? Is there a big item at the top of it that you can share with us, like in terms of what you need to tackle next?
Yeah. What's the name of the league? Yeah, I got to start there. Okay. I'm not kidding. We've had a lot of good conversations all through this. And a lot of people were set up to start to work once we got going, but no one could get going until we were ready. And so that has all been happening this week. I will tell you, we have had players involved in those discussions, like they have been involved in discussions about cities and about rules and about conditions and about a draft. And that is going to be a theme of this ownership and the fact that it's a single entity. We intend to be very collaborative with our players. Their input has been fantastic. and we have formalized a collaboration element as well in the collective bargaining. So that's going to continue, and they also have been involved in helping us with our name.
It's very cool. And it seems like I've heard from players about that collaboration and some of the CBA moments as well. I've heard so much about not like the fact that it was a player led collective or bargaining committee, I should say, I think is really cool. I mean, I know that there's players involved in players associations and other leagues, but the fact that there's, a pregnant Kendall Coyne Schofield across the other side of the table. And I mean, I've just heard so much about her leadership. And if you want something done, you go to Kendall. What was that like going up against Kendall Coyne in some of those negotiations?
Kendall is extremely passionate about this project. She is also determined as hell to get what she thinks is right, but she has such a great demeanor with her. I don't think she ever turned off anyone on the other side of the table. She just kept talking, right? She just kept talking in the best possible way. I told Sarah Nurse a week ago that I had predicted back in March, whenever we were together in Palm Springs, that look, this is how collective bargaining works. The last week or so will be ugly. I'm sorry, it will. It just will, getting those last things done. But once it's done and we're all back on the same side of the table again, it's going to feel fantastic. And I reminded her last week that I am 2 for 2 in those predictions, that the last week or two was ugly because that's how stuff works. But now we're all just ebullient about the final result and excited about the prospects of our future.
Mm-hmm. Mark Walter's such a major player in a lot of different spaces. You've been aligned with him since 2012, I believe, with the Dodgers. I mean, we're familiar with him just from following his work elsewhere, but a lot of people aren't. So how would you describe, his demeanor and his approach and his sort of bona fides as an exec to people who are just kind of being exposed to him maybe in the women's
I will
space?
tell you, when we got together, I had my own record at that point, my own resume, and we got together on this because he was a passionate fan of sports, didn't really think about investing in sports until the opportunity crossed his desk. And but he wants it to be the best it can be, and he wants it to work. That's in all of his investments. And when we got together and it was clear that I was going to undertake this, he said to me 2 things. He said, "Stan, I'm a passionate fan. I have a lot of opinions. You're going to hear a lot of opinions, and you are to disregard all of them. You have to make these decisions, or else why am I hiring you?" And I said that to Andrew Friedman when we were hiring him. I said, "This is how Mark works." Mm-hmm. And when he finally met Mark said the same thing to him. Mm-hmm. And that is how we have lived for 11 years together. Mark is passionate, always following the score, even when we're not in touch for weeks at a time or more. He's on top of everything, and he will have opinions, and sometimes he delivers them forcefully, but he expects us to disregard them if we think we have a better idea. And you can't have better ownership than that.
How do you disregard? Like, are you okay?
Yeah,
thanks, Mark.
Mark.
We'll take that under consideration. We appreciate the input.
No, it's something like, that's a really good idea. That's really interesting, but here's how we see it. And it's not quite that condensed. Sometimes it takes a couple of weeks for that process to play out. But, just my experience with him here has been a dream come true for a guy who does what I do, to be given the resources, the direction, the support, the time. I call those the 4 things that a president needs to provide to his staff. And likewise, what an owner needs to provide to his president. We get all of that. It's enabled us to do what we've done with the Dodgers. And the other things, we've also won a championship with the Sparks. So that's how Mark is. Mark understands that professionals are professional, and if they're not working out, then we'll change them. But so far, things have been working out just fine. That's the kind of owner he is.
And I mean, bringing that partnership with Billie Jean King, Alana Kloss, the other members of who are going to make up this leadership group of the league. I mean, why is women's hockey something that Mark and yourself and everybody who's involved ultimately decided is worth the investment and in all of this time?
Well, I think it really started with Billie Jean and Alana. We are very close to
Mhm.
them. They are involved in a lot of things we do. We are already in women's sports. We our support for the Billie Jean King Cup, which used to be the Federation Cup, our ownership of the Sparks. And so when an opportunity like this arose, Mark said, let's do it. I mean, nothing lost if we didn't get it, but so let's try it. And so we tried, we pushed a little more than we thought we would have to do to get it done. But at the end of the day, Mark and I talked about it. In our portfolio of sports holdings, we do have two things already that are in the women's space. We do have Sparks. We do have the support for the Billie Jean King Cup. But this would be a third thing, but it would be different because this is something we've created. We've started something. We built something new for women with the ability for all of these elements to come together. And that's a different thing. And Mark was all in on that.
And I mean, in your career, you've been in so many different spaces and done so many different things, whether it's, hoops GM or the work with the Nats or helping get the Thrashers off the ground. But this is the first time and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is the first time you've launched a league, right? You individually, personally.
First time anyone has
that
done that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. As I told Ted Turner the first time he told me to take over a second team, he said, yeah, you'll be the first guy doing that. Isn't that right? I go, yeah, Ted, do you know why that is? It's such a bad idea. But Ted Turner and I had an understanding that when he and I disagreed on something, we just did things his way. So that's how I got into expanding my domain. And it's kind of a curse that people have so much confidence in you that you could do these things. I don't have that kind of confidence. So when Mark came, they said, I mean, okay, I'll try. And here we are. So now let's see if it works. I mean, yeah, we got deals done. Now let's see if it works. But we're going to hire good people too. And that's how I know it's going to work. Because if I have one principle that I have in managing sports teams or companies in general, it comes down to 8 words. It's hire good people, let them do their jobs. It's kind of what Mark Walter says, right? Hire good people, let them do their jobs. That's exactly how I operate. And so far, so good.
Well, I guess that's kind of one of the big items on the to-do list, right? Is to be building out not just the name of the league and what the teams are going to be, but also how are people going to go to those teams? Who are going to be the GMs, the coaches? But one of the elements that I'm really interested in, Stan, when we're looking at women's hockey, typically the biggest challenges in this sport, it's never an issue of the talent and the skill in women's hockey. It's been kind of the visibility and the marketing. So how do you see not just the front offices, but your business teams being built out and really making sure that come January, people know Hailey Knight is in this city playing for this team against this team in this league? How do you imagine that happening?
By the way, on that night, Kendall has already assured me that, I know it's only 6 months, she will be in shape and she will be on the ice that night.
Right.
So I'm looking
that
forward
doesn't
to that.
surprise me at all.
Yeah.
Not a bit.
I'm excited. I'm very excited
not
for that.
A bit. There's no question that enhanced marketing is a feature of running sports teams. We intend to put a lot of energy into that, both with staffing and with budgets to get that word out. But let me tell you something else that I couldn't have counted on, but has been such a shot in the arm for us. The immediate acceptance and support from the NHL was really heartwarming to us. And that is a very big X factor in how we go about this. We have already been in talks with them across a range of subjects. We're going to continue those talks. But, the association with the NHL, which I love and which I spent a long time in, and my association with Gary Bettman, which really lasts my entire career, is a great piece of news that other leagues didn't have until now, but we have it now. And that's not just me saying it. Gary was generous enough to tweet that out himself that first day. So that's a difference maker, I think, Hailey. And I think you're going to know where Hillary Knight is playing on January 1. I'm pretty sure of that.
I mean, that is something that we've heard from Gary in the league over the last year or so, that, you know, step one is consolidation, right? In knowing the
Yeah.
and having one specific league before it got his imprimatur and all that and all that sort of stuff. So how have those how have those conversations changed, I guess, over the last week or so?
When we bought the PHF, again, I'd been under an NDA, could not tell anyone about the discussions. Once it was done, I was free to talk. So my first call was to Jana Heffer, who was leading the PA for the PWH players. My second call was to Gary to tell him I wasn't going to be one of those guys, Gary, who tells you what we're going to do, what we're thinking about doing, what we're planning on doing. I waited till I could tell you we had done it. And he could not have been more excited. He said it's what he's been waiting for. He has been as good as his word. And we have had talks from that day on about the different ways we can work together. So it could not have been better. Could not have been better.
I'm sure this is exactly what you were thinking in the 80s when you were the GM of the Hawks and he was working for the league. You said later on down the line, we're going to partner and maybe do something with the launch of a women's professional hockey league. I'm sure that's how you drew it up.
I will tell you this. We had a contentious moment. We were talking about a contract or something. I tend to generate a lot of contentious moments with people. I don't know why, but I remember Gary saying to me, he won't remember this, but I remember him saying during the thing, hey, we're going to be friends a long time. We have to get through this. I remember him saying that to me. I didn't know about all this, but he was right. We have been friends a long time.
I think what's interesting about, you know, these conversations that you're having with the NHL, with Gary Bettman, is that for a long time, NHL's involvement in women's hockey almost looked like the WNBA model, right? But now it probably looks a little bit different because you and Mark and Billie Jean King are involved. So, you know, we're almost looking at like, and forgive me because maybe this isn't something you can get into at this time because it's still so early, but instead of like a WNBA model, maybe it's a bit more of like a soccer model where there's like how the MLS, there's the owner operator model. You know, a team can come in and provide assistance, provide that marketing, you know, if it's even just the Pittsburgh Penguins social media team helping out on a day-to-day basis. There's just so many different ways that this can look, which is very interesting.
Like almost everything I've done in the last year, this too is starting from a blank piece of paper. And so any of those possibilities exist, and we'll continue to explore them. I will say this to all of you, because I said this to our players, the PWHPA players, on my first meeting with them. We're going to do this. We're going to get this done. But in year one, I am going to make mistakes. Okay. I am going to make, I said a lot of mistakes. Hopefully it's not that many, but I know I will. And we'll fix them. We'll fix them. By year two, we should have our program down. We should have our staffs fully staffed. We should have enough experience that we will really know how to make this bird fly. But I'm going to make mistakes in year one. Hopefully this podcast is not one of them, but we're going to make mistakes. I know it. I get it. It's part of it's part of building companies. And, but that's okay. We're prepared for them. We're prepared to learn from them and do better. So just bear with us while us and our players and our fans, we're all learning together. And that's how I'm looking at it.
You know, one question, Stan, that I had asked you, but when we talked previously, you mentioned that, you know, there was a bit of an evaluation process when you guys first got involved, or at least when Mark first got involved, and he kind of wanted to look into things and say, before I invest the time, the money, I've got to see, like, is this something that could work? You know, without giving all the trade secrets, you know, can you share with us like what Mark or what you learned through that process that made you go from, hey, should we get involved, to, yep, we're all in, we're going to create this thing?
Well, I can't kid you. This is going to be expensive, and we had to evaluate, you know, whether this was a good expense or not. But I want you to know that Mark undertook this knowing all of that, knowing just what we think it's going to be. And at the end of the day, the most important thing to him was that it doesn't fail. And by failing means we wind up having to fold someday. That is not going to happen here. Mark is not planning this for the short term. He's not even planning this for the long term. He's planning for this to be permanent. And that was what we had to do. And at the end of the day, when he looked at me and said, okay, should we do this? I said, yep, we should do it. So that's how I feel too.
And understanding the timeline of everything that happened here too, Stan, why was the purchase or the purchase of certain assets from the PHF, why was that important for the future of the game or the success of this league? Like, why did that need to happen now?
Well, I don't know that it needed to. We were certainly contemplating earlier that there would be 2 leagues. But I think everyone involved, I think the PW, I think the PH, me, Mark, Gary, I think everyone understood that our best case would be someday when there was 1 league for all the best players in the world to play in. Now, we had our different opinions about what that should look like or how we get there. But as we spoke with the PH and as they came to understand how we were viewing this, I think even they realized, hey, this might be the best and the quickest way to get the thing that all of us wanted to happen. So I give them enormous credit, both for the work they did in keeping and building their league, as well as recognizing the opportunity they had to contribute to making the 1 league for everyone. And I hope they get the credit for those decisions, because they did a lot of great work. The Boyntons and all of their partners did a lot of great work. Commissioner Reagan Carey did a lot of great work to get us to this point. But here we are, and now we have the thing that all of us have long wanted, have long thought was really the way for women's hockey to succeed. And here we are.
And you mentioned the things that you can draw from the PHF and from the Boyntons and from the work that they've done, all the positives. There's also the flip side where, you not just with the PF, but other pro leagues, you can kind of see where they've some of the pitfalls that have kind of befallen them. So what, I guess, and I realize this is a big question, but this is part of, I guess, filling out the blank piece of paper that you're talking about here, but what is going to make this league different from the other attempts at a pro women's league?
That is a good question, Sean, and I'm very certain about my answer. First of all, this is a single entity. It is owned by Mark. All our teams are owned by Mark or the venture. And we are not going to have some of the pitfalls that you get when there are different owners with different agendas and different budgets and, fighting each other. We're going to have however many teams we have, they're all going to start with an equal chance to succeed and to compete, because we want strong franchises in every city. We think we have built a lot of those protections into the collective bargaining agreement, again, with the agreement of our players. And we have strong ownership, strong leadership, more than adequate resources backing. And when you start with ownership and leadership of Mark Walter and Billie Jean King, I'm sorry, it does not get better than that. So that is my answer to why this is going to work. It is absolutely going to work.
I think it's so interesting because there was maybe a mindset that the individual ownership group was going to be the path forward, but we've seen with so many different leagues that have been in the past, even with the original NWHL that Jana Heffer would have played in, if you had a good owner, you were doing all right. But if your owner didn't really care or didn't have as much money, you didn't have the same resources. So I think it's really important to show single entity is not a bad thing here necessarily. This will be good. This is a positive, because the individual ownership models have, maybe not with the PHF, but in the past, in the history of this sport, have been the downfall.
Well, we're starting with X number of teams, which haven't divulged yet, but
how many? Sorry,
X. That's an X spelled with an X. And
I'm not very good at math. I didn't do trig or anything.
Also, not necessarily meant as a Roman numeral, so we cannot infer that there are going to be 10 teams.
I'm not saying it is
X as a placeholder. Yes.
Yeah.
Whatever we do in this first year, it's learning what we are, who we are, how we make this work.
Mhm.
And then once we get that formula down, we absolutely have plans to grow the league. We absolutely have plans to expand both domestically as well as internationally. And so that's what I want to say. Along the way, do we change the model to allow individual owners? Maybe, maybe not. We don't have any firm plans on that. I was in on the creation of the WNBA, and as you know, we started with every team had to be owned by that city's NBA team and play in that city's NBA arena. And over time, that model evolved away from that. It's getting a little closer now. And so who knows what will happen, but to start it out, to get the formula right, to make sure everyone is rowing in the same direction, we think the way we have it set up now is our best shot at getting this right.
Can you give us any kind of roadmap from here until the January launch? Like, is there a plan for the drafts? Are there signposts along the way from July to January that are going to get us ready?
Yeah, as I've said, we're going to have a gala launch press conference. Let's call it in August sometime, and at that time, we'll be revealing all the details that we have by then. Between now and then, we'll probably be dropping some breadcrumbs along the way, give you guys a few nuggets here and there. But
you know where to find us. By the way, we're not talking.
I got you. The first week's business is okay. Let's get a name of the league. Just this morning, I committed to a company to get us a logo for the league. We are working on finalizing our list of cities. And by the way, that has become subject to change too. For all the work we were doing, a lot of cities just didn't understand what we were doing, putting a second team in a league that already had a PHF team in it. Well, they now see things differently in some cities that weren't playing before. So we have to do that. We have to make deals with venues in cities that have multiple venues. We don't want it too small. We don't want it too big. And then we have to have a schedule. And then one of the next things is deciding on the player pool to make sure everyone has the fairest chance to play in this league as all of us on all sides of this equation wanted, because we do want the best of the best, no matter where they come from, no matter or PW, PH, international, collegiate. I certainly hope that's taking place sometime in August, but I can't promise that. We do need, because these are real humans we're talking, but they need to know where they're living. They need to make their own plans. And in the future, it won't be as rushed as it might be this year. In the future, our calendar will move a little bit and we'll know how to do it better. But for now, we are drinking out of the fire hose, trying to do a million things at once.
So you're telling me not to take any vacation in July or August?
I didn't say that, but I will say this.
Just like not in the second week of
I won't care whether you're on vacation or not. Okay, but listen, there'll be news when you get back. Also, there'll be news. So
go somewhere with cell service is what you're saying. Okay, don't go anywhere all that remote.
There's nothing I enjoy more than breaking news that no one in the media knew about ahead of time. I love doing that. So I know you hate to hear that, but that's one of my particular points of pride.
Understandable. It's all in the game. We respect it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, on that note, Stan, thank you so much for walking us through everything. It sounds like it's going to be a really busy but exciting time in the sport, and we're so glad that you were able to come on and do this conversation with us.
Great. I look forward to it. We'll do this a lot more in the future. Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
Great.